Empirical research on urban and rural education equality of Inner Mongolia under the background of urban-rural integration. Analysis based on education Gini coefficient. Here are the contents. Part 1. Research background. Part 2. Method and summary statistics. Part 3. Analysis of research results. Part 4. Analysis of restrictive factors. Part 5. Countermeasures and suggestions. Part 1. Research background. Background 1. The general goal of education development is proposed at the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee. Background 2. In the new historical starting point, the development of fairer and more quality of education is an inevitable requirement. Background 3. To develop education, no one should be left behind, and no region or ethnic group should be left behind. Background 4. The school-age students in Inner Mongolia have a strong desire to receive education, but the degree of balanced allocation of public education resources is not high. Part 2. Method and summary statistics. Computing method. 1. Calculation of years of education per capita. 2. Calculation of Gini coefficient of education. 3. Decomposition of the Gini coefficient in education. The authoritative and accessible data of China Population and Employment Statistical Yearbook are good. Since 2002, the theme of equality in education has been formally brought into the political context and gradually pushed into the public view. Thus, the development of compulsory education began to shift towards the direction of paying attention to equity. Therefore, this study selected the statistical data of the educational situation of the population in Inner Mongolia by urban, township, and gender from China Population and Employment Statistical Yearbook from 2002 and from 2002 to 2018. Part 3. Analysis of research results. (3.1) Urban-rural difference of per capita education years in Inner Mongolia. 1. The number of years of schooling per capita in Inner Mongolia has increased from 7.88 years in 2002 to 9.69 years in 2018. Having completed the required number of years of compulsory education, cities have the highest number of years of schooling per capita. The number of years of education per capita in rural areas is the lowest, and the increased degree is the smallest, and the gap between urban and rural areas is large. Judging from the proportion of population grouped according to education level, the overall educational level of Inner Mongolia population is in the transition stage from junior middle school to senior high school. 2. The gap between the number of years of education per capita of urban and rural residents has widened, which is mainly reflected in the educational opportunities of high school or above, and the rate of illiteracy and semi-illiteracy. There is still a huge gap between the educational level of rural population and the overall level. 3. The gap between male and female years of schooling is narrowing, both overall and by urban and rural areas. The average number of years of education of males is higher than that of females, and the gap between genders in urban areas is smaller than that in rural areas. Rural women have the lowest number of years of schooling per capita. (3.2) Urban-rural differences in education Gini coefficient in Inner Mongolia. 1. The educational equity of urban and rural residents in Inner Mongolia has improved rapidly. With the increase of per capita schooling years, the Gini coefficient of urban and rural education shows a decreasing trend. 2. The level of gender-specific Gini coefficient in both urban and rural areas showed a downward trend, and the downward trend of female was higher than that of male, and the downward trend of rural was higher than that of urban. 3. The educational Gini coefficient gap between genders was narrowing, but females were higher than males in all groups. Rural women in particular have the highest Gini coefficient. Analysis of research results. 1. The contribution rate of cities and towns to the development of education is increasing. 2. The contribution of rural areas to educational development has dropped significantly. 3. The difference between urban and rural areas has always been the main cause of the overall education inequity in Inner Mongolia, and its contribution rate has been increasing year by year. Part 4. Analysis of restrictive factors. Restrictive factors. Factor 1. Economic and social structure leads to the widening gap between urban and rural education. Under the effect of the household registration system, urban-rural Dao structure has been produced. The distribution pattern of basic education resources between urban and rural areas is unreasonable. Household registration makes education without class become an extravagant hope. 2. a public investment system with unclear government responsibilities and low decentralization. The ambiguity of government investment responsibility leads to the ambiguity of financial sharing mechanism. The compulsory education financial system of provincial overall planning and county-based makes the main focus of cost sharing too low. Educational immigration dilutes the level of educational development. The unidirectional city-oriented flow of rural students and excellent teachers. The lack of foresight in education immigration policy has resulted in new education polarization. Factor 4. The protection of rural teachers. The protection of rural teachers' rights and interests is insufficient. Teachers in rural areas face great difficulties in obtaining professional benefits. There is an imbalance in the quantity and the quality of teachers between urban and rural areas. Part 5. Countermeasures and suggestions. 1. Build a government-led multi-education governance community in urban and rural areas. Village school principals shall be given full autonomy in school administration and academic research. Create a good atmosphere of respecting teachers and valuing education. Encourage rural schools to carry out practical explorations in educational reform. Establish an assessment and evaluation system. 2. Promote the two-way flow of educational resources between urban and rural areas. Reform the mechanism for sharing government funds and improve and adjust the structure of education spending at all levels. The central government and the provincial governments will further increase financial transfers to poverty-stricken ethnic minority areas. Explore models of cooperation between urban and rural schools. Focus on improvement of the quality of education. 3. Continue to implement the village teacher support scheme. Start from the construction of teachers in areas where teachers are scarce. Establish a two-way flow mechanism of urban and rural teacher resources. Rural teachers further study, joint training, and targeted training have become normal. 4. Develop preschool education in rural areas vigorously. Expand the coverage of pre-sex education for all. Strengthen the connection and integration of urban and rural preschool education resources. Promote the development of preschool education in rural areas in a more balanced, high-quality, distinctive, and innovative way. 5. Promote targeted poverty alleviation through education. increase funding for education from the central government budget, accelerate the standardization of public education services, and thus promote equalization. Pay attention to education of the disadvantaged groups support. 6. Promote the informatization of education. Promote the application of Internet plus education in compulsory education vigorously. To enable students to access and enjoy quality educational resources through the Internet plus education mode. To guide the various roles involved in education to form a correct understanding. Thanks for your listening. Please criticize and correct.